Hi, I'm Tessa, a veteran educator working in the field of special education.
And I'm Kim, mom of two autistic boys and a late diagnosed autistic person myself.
And welcome to Totally Over the Spectrum, where we dive into embracing autism through understanding and support. Welcome to episode 43, where we discuss stress on an autistic brain.
This all started because I came across a recent study posted by Sensory Stories by Nicole on Instagram, who is an autism advocate and author. I will put a link to the study that she gave in the description. But basically, the study was looking at the growing concern that autistic individuals have a heightened sensitivity to trauma.
Okay.
So this study found that what would typically be classified as mildly stressful events creates post-traumatic stress disorder like memory, and that in turn exacerbates autistic traits. Now, it's really important to note, and I'm not sure that she noted this in her clip, but that the study uses a mouse model. This is not studies done on human beings.
Okay.
So you can't directly extrapolate the results to humans. You're basically using mice that have been genetically modified to mimic autistic behaviors, as well as the social and cognitive characteristics. What makes this study particularly interesting, because they've been doing that for a long time, that's not new.
Yeah.
What makes this study particularly interesting is that they used 4 different mouse models, and they had very clear results across the board, which would indicate a really strong neurobiological and physiological framework for pursuing this line of study in the autistic population.
Yeah. And like you said, it's not, there are multiple studies, and I did pull up the same type of study with the American Psychological Association that was done in 2006, and pretty much came up with the same definitions as that you had just provided.
Yeah. There have been a lot of studies that are done that show that autistic individuals experience more stressors over the course of their lifetime than neurotypical people, so that's not new. But what this is saying is that it was widely considered that we perceived the stressors to be more severe, because the scale of severity is based on the tolerance level of neurotypical people.
Yes, it is. And you're absolutely right on that, because the research that I had found indicated, also once again from the Psychological Society, when someone is in a state of heightened anxiety or flooded with sensory input, the brain can become overwhelmed and demand the 3 F's, the fight, the flight, or the freeze response. In autistic people, this can result in a meltdown, and it is equivalent to a fight response or a freeze response, which is often interpreted by neurotypical people as a temper tantrum. Now, we have discussed shutdowns and meltdowns in one of our previous episodes, and I'm certain that you're going to be putting a link to that on there.
We'll do that. You know, autistic individuals are told all the time that we're too sensitive, right? Like, why does that bother you? You're just being dramatic. It wasn't that bad. But what this new study is saying is that we're not just perceiving a stressor to be more severe. It actually is more severe for us on a neurobiological level.
Yeah. The studies also show that everything becomes a catastrophic level, right? And that is what creates that persona of temper tantrums for neurotypical people, when in essence it is a shutdown.
Yeah. I'd actually like to know what our viewers think about it. So please leave us a comment, what your thoughts are. And if you're enjoying our content, please consider subscribing.
And if you're not, please let us know. Please share your comments with us, and maybe we can try and fix it.
There you go. So why is this idea important? Because when autistic children are taught, the go-to is behavioral therapy. Now, like applied behavior analysis, ABA. And before you defend ABA, because I know you're actually a proponent, yes, it is evidence-based. That is true. However, the evidence-based, it's evidence-based for improving educational outcomes and different types of skill development, but it doesn't address the impact of stress and trauma, which should really be part of the assessment and the therapy planning process.
The reason why I'm an advocate for ABA is because as an educator, I have implemented a lot of the strategies and the foundations of that when teaching a student a new skill set. However, before I implement them, my first job is to create a relationship and a high level of trust between myself and my student, and pushing the boundaries to the point of just extending them out of their comfort zone, but not to the point of such discomfort that they become totally dysregulated. It's finding that sweet spot of stretching. And this comes with getting to know your student and getting to know that person on what makes them click and what doesn't.
So I know that you are really good at it. Because for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, Tessa actually worked with my youngest son, Peter, who's level 3 non-speaking. And she's done such amazing work with him and really advanced him quite a lot. So I know that when implemented correctly, these strategies work. I'd like to know how you think educators would interact differently with their autistic students if they knew that stretching them too far doesn't just lead to dysregulation, but actually causes PTSD-like responses.
That's going to really change the mind on a lot of educators, right? The concept on going, oh my gosh, is this PTSD? But I think people need to also take it with a grain of salt and say, don't be afraid to still implement them. Just do the research and do the due diligence that is extremely important about implementing it effectively. I think PTSD is going to change the outlook on maybe bringing it more of a softer approach, and there's so many components in that it's hard to describe just one aspect of it. But I think it's going to be more so led by the person with autism and taking their lead and implementing it into the strategies.
Yeah.
Ideally, that's what I'd like to see happen.
And from the sounds of things, that's where ABA is headed. I think it is. I think that's the idea, that you now have voices in the ABA community who are respecting that autistic people need to have a voice in the process of creating this.
They should.
Yeah, of course they should.
Because as a neurotypical person, we are never going to have that understanding holistically because we are not neurodivergent. So in the same way that you often say, I don't get it. I don't get how neurotypical people have this unspoken rule and how do you know it? It's hard to describe. So it's the same, right? It's the same understanding. We're never going to be able to get it from your perspective. So I think the basis and the foundations of that need to come from you.
Just as an aside, Tess is referring to herself as a neurotypical person, but I fully believe that Tessa has ADHD, and I'm trying desperately to get her to go and have a full assessment done. But, nailing her down to do that is impossible because she's got ADHD. Yeah, anyway, so we already know that there are high rates of comorbidity between autism and mental health issues like anxiety and depression. And we talk about that in another episode, which again, I will link. It makes perfect sense that if you not only experience more stressors in your life, but that even mild stressors impact you profoundly, of course you're going to have mental health issues. And as someone who's late diagnosed, the experience of growing up wondering why things that seem so easy for other people are so incredibly difficult for you it's devastating. Not having someone else that you can relate to is isolating and incredibly lonely. One of the best parts of doing this podcast for me is reading the comments that people post about their experiences. And we had a comment on TikTok a little while ago about a clip that we were talking about how horrific smells can be. So this was from Mad Bitey Woman, which I think is a fantastic username. And she said, not diagnosed, mother to an ASD adult child, My sense of smell is dog level, and I have thrown up because of smells. I also can't think. Don't ask me math or money question when there is a smell. First of all, thank you so much for your comment. Secondly, I completely relate to the idea that a smell can be so bad that you literally cannot do complex thinking.
I think most of us can relate on some level, but not to that magnified level as a person with autism, because we know, and evidence has provided that your senses are so heightened that we could never understand it.
You know, I think I was trying to think of an analogy for neurotypical people, and the only thing I could come up with was a fart. That's all I could come up with.
Of course.
That hydrogen sulfide smell, that rotten egg smell. And if you were to come up, if you're in a store and that you get a whiff of that smell, surely you can taste it also as a neurotypical person. Surely. And you see people, neurotypical people have gag reflex over, oh, that's a terrible smell. Even though you might think that perfume and cologne is a pleasant smell, in the quantity that an autistic person can smell it, it's just as bad. It is just as bad. So you walk behind someone, and it's like this cloud following them. And you're just holding your breath trying to get around this person because it lingers too. It's not like you have to be right next to the person. They could have already walked by, and then you just get this waft of gross that is just in your nose and your throat, and you can't get rid of it. Now imagine an autistic child in a classroom trying to focus on money math, while the person they're working with smells like they were inside of a Lush store when it exploded. And you're like, hey, do this thing. I can't do that. I can't get past this smell. So I appreciate that there are scent-free environments now. That is really important.
Well, I can honestly say you are going to change my shopping experience forever. It is going to be a combination of, getting ready for a stand-up comedy and the visuals of Pepe Le Pew bouncing through the fields.
That is exactly what it is like. If you have a non-speaking child who they might not be able to communicate what is distressing them. And then you might have level 1 kids that were taught, you can't tell someone they smell bad. You can't do that. That's not okay. And because we have no ability to adapt that to different situations, it's a hard and fast rule. You simply cannot tell someone that they smell bad. So now they just don't know what to do. So they just become dysregulated because I can't tell the person they smell bad, but I also can't function because they smell bad.
Yeah. So teaching them an alternative is to say, there is a scent that is causing me to become dysregulated. I need to step out of this environment. So self-advocacy is going to be key to situations like that.
Sure, but then they'll say, what is the smell? So if it's like someone's working with my son Alex, for example, because he's level 1. Come on, Alex, yesterday you did your math work so easily. And then you've got Alex going, well, yesterday your breath didn't smell like popcorn, Patricia. Like, he's not allowed to say that. So if he says, well, there's a smell, and they say, well, what's the smell?
Well, he can be honest and say what type of smell it is, and without having to implement, somebody causing the odor, he could do that.
I'm not sure there's a way around saying, hey, it smells like popcorn. That's you. Like, that's coming from you.
Well, I see where you're going with this, but we can find ways of working around that.
I suppose as you get older, you will develop those things. But when you're younger,
it is far more difficult.
And
yes,
when you're
is.
in the moment and that smell is distressing you, sometimes your tact is going to leave you no matter what stage of life you're at.
It is, and I think neurodivergent people need to just take a step back and go, honesty is not an insult. It's just honesty, and that person has the lack of ability to tastefully put or subtly put the information across.
Sometimes things just stink, and you just lose all ability to do anything but try to deal with that.
So I think education is going to be necessary for
Education is-
neurodivergent, neurotypical people, not neurodivergent.
Yeah, I think it would be great.
It will be. We've got a long way to go, but we're making progress.
All right, that is the end of my list. Did you have anything else?
The only thing that I found is that all the research that I did was everything is catastrophic when it comes to stress in an autistic brain. And we need to just take a step back and focus on the moment before we can move forward. And I think a lot more research is necessary to aid us in how to implement ABA, for example, a lot more effectively. And I think this is a good topic to lead into talking on a more serious note on PTSD. I think that is going to be really, really important, as it is a big subject, and I think there's a lot of information that we can help with.
Sounds good.
Okay. Till then, have a great day.
We'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in. If you know someone who might find this episode helpful, feel free to share. Also, check out our website and socials linked in the description.